Okay, hi everyone. I think we're live. Welcome to this Alan Turing Institute AIUK Fringe event. I think we're live, and so Alison. Okay, hi everyone. I think we're live. Welcome to this. Alison, feel free to start.
Welcome to this AIUK Fringe event in partnership with the Alan Turing Institute. And today we're in the UCL Knowledge Lab in London. And I'm Alison Littlejohn. I'm director of the lab. I'm going to introduce some of the other people in just one moment. But first of all, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the UCL Knowledge Lab. Because we are an interdisciplinary research lab and we're focused on technology, media, and education. So there's about 70 of us, curious people, carrying out all kinds of research. Today, we're focusing on AI and education. And we'll hear from two of the professors in the lab who are focusing on AI and also the work of a third professor. So these professors are Professor Manolis Mavrikis, please wave, Professor Kaska Porayska-Pomsta, and also our colleague, Professor Mutlu Cukurova. We run various MA courses within the lab, and we have one in education and technology, which is a particular focus on AI and education. If you have any questions about anything today, you can see that we are using Slido. So please put questions in the Slido using the hashtag there. And if you have any comments, we'd love to hear from you. But before we dive into all the details, I'd like to introduce Professor Dame Celia Hoyles, who's here with me right now. Now, Celia has been a pioneer of technology and education for some decades. She has had a very distinguished career, especially in mathematics education. But also you were one of the pioneers of the lab. And I'm going to hand over to Celia to talk about the early days of the lab.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you, Manolis. I'm a bit of a historic monument. I think that's why I've been invited here. But the lab is now 20 years old, and I came here with Richard Noss, who was the founding director of the lab 20 years ago now. It's unbelievable. But one of our early projects was about first of all, when the lab opened in 2004, Richard and I invited Seymour Papert, who was professor at MIT and a professor of artificial intelligence, which is very relevant to today's theme. And he was talking about the importance of knowledge. He said the K word is back. So artificial intelligence is not just about process, it's about transforming knowledge. And we need to think about knowledge and need to think about in terms of its learnability. And Seymour Papert, as you will know, he was one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence with Marvin Minsky. And he came to the lab, he opened it. I thought it was inspirational. And many of you will know that he, in fact, invented or pioneered the invention of a computer language called Logo, which was actually developed for children, for learning, and is still around in its various forms. And so I think we still try to think about that early time and how we might transform learning of mathematics, which is my subject, but also other things as well. So going on, we had a lot of projects about exploratory learning. But as we know, the teacher is really important in any sort of mathematical learning. And so Richard and I wrote a proposal, a research proposal called, which was about generalizing, supporting mathematical generalization through artificial intelligence. Now, this was a long time ago. This was 2007. So we wrote the proposal in 2006. So it is quite a time ago that we wrote this. So it was very early days. But we knew a lot about mathematics and mathematics learning. We know where the major problems are in terms of mathematical generalization and where you need to intervene. And this is what our project was about. I want to mention three things about the project. First of all, it was interdisciplinary. It was funded by ESRC and EPSRC. So it was supposed to be about the learning side, but also about the technical side. And I think that interdisciplinarity is really important. And I certainly, and so did Richard, we learned a huge amount. Secondly, we were trying to have artificial intelligence where the children would be exploring in our software, but we would develop prompts. And this is why this is what our research officers, one of them is Manolis, who is running this seminar, but also Irini, who is on the slide. It was a collaboration with us and Bert Beck, the computer scientist at Bert Beck. And looking at that photograph that Manolis has put up, this was our team. This was interdisciplinary. I was just looking at, my goodness, there are people who are computer scientists, there are people who are mathematicians, there are people who are educationists. And I think this is both a strength, but also a challenge for us all. And I was looking back at what we found. I think finding the right prompt at the right time is really a critical task for AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celia, and thanks to everyone for joining and attending online. So I'm Manolis Mavrikis. I'm a professor here at the UCL Knowledge Lab. I'll take it from here. So there is a lot of hype surrounding AI out there, isn't there? It's spread in almost every aspect of our lives, from autonomous vehicles to games to medicine and health applications, voice and face recognition. I'm sure you could add more to the list if I asked you. Of course, much of this interest is lately because of generative AI. One must be living under a rock to not have heard of such tools, and every day there are new tools added to this list. I just found this earlier this week. But one of our messages today is that AI is not a new phenomenon, and now it has become a catch-all term for a vast array of applications, including in education. And this brings us to our goal today, to revisit AI in education, both as an outcome, but also as a process and as a field. And within that, our role, as in the UCL Knowledge Lab and researchers as a whole, partly because together with the hype, the narrative of AI has often been either a rising hero that will kind of solve all our challenges, or a rogue villain that will take over our jobs and autonomy. And what's happening is that this general discourse around AI in society is also getting applied in education, partly because it's thrilling and kind of makes the news usually. But I believe this is a false dichotomy, partly because personally I'm a skeptical optimist, as philosophically, I guess, and that I believe that we should be researching the potential for improvement, but tempered with a critical understanding. So today we want to start this conversation with you all, going back to some of the projects that we've done and what we are seeing as important issues coming up, and unpack these different dimensions of AI to help us understand the impact and the implications. So I'd like to start first by addressing the elephant in the room. This illustration that some of you may have seen, it captures both mostly a possible dystopian future. Some people may be seeing it as a positive, but it is a classroom in the year 2000, which, by the way, we have passed already, where books are fed into a machine and knowledge is seemingly wired directly into the students' brains. This provides a very interesting starting point to discuss both hopes and fears, as well as all the myths surrounding AI. I hope that will show that our research is far from this dystopian future that this figure has, and that mostly because we bring a rich and rigorous history with the field of AI in education stretching back over many years. I keep referring to a field the same way that we're celebrating 20 years. The International Society on Artificial Intelligence in Education is also closed 30 years last year, and generally research in this area goes back more than 50 years. So that brings a legacy of research and evidence that brings together technology and pedagogy. It's transdisciplinary and provides knowledge and know-how around this particular application of AI in education, but also both in terms of tools, as in specific outcomes that students and teachers and other educators and trainers can use, but also provides methods for generating evidence. And so from this larger space of AI in education, the work that we do here at the UCL Knowledge Lab covers a lot of these facets, from foundational research, but also teaching with and about AI, and using AI as a methodology, but also touching into taking into account principles for responsible AI and having a more critical stance, as I mentioned. So we will take you through a whistle-stop tour of these different dimensions. And so now I'm changing hat and I'm wearing my own research hat that mostly fits under this AI as tools area. Just to draw your attention again to this Slido that is up and running with this number here, or you can use the QR code if you have a mobile. You can post questions. We will probably not have time today to include them in the discussion, but we have an event on Friday and it will shape our fireside chat on Friday. So we covered the fact that AI is not only the generative AI, and we wanted to highlight the fact that there are all kinds of AI applications in education. These types of technologies vary a lot. We don't have time to go into all of this, but they include things like chatbots that most people are now familiar, partly because of the large language models that have been made available as chatbots, but when we're talking about research in the AI in education field, we are talking about not the vanilla versions that are available there, but evidence-based and research-based applications like dialogue-based tutoring systems that take into account a lot of the responsible and pedagogically valid approaches to how to address education. So the list goes on. There are, if you're interested in this, our colleague Wayne Holmes has a recent paper that goes deeper on that, and the list also includes what most people are probably more familiar with: intelligent tutoring systems that are designed to break down problems, give feedback, and have been evaluated at scale. But our point is that all of these are underpinned by some different forms of artificial intelligence, and not only generative AI. In our work, particularly at the lab, our commitment has been to what Celia mentioned at the beginning as well, around constructionist and inquiry learning, or otherwise also known as exploratory. And through a series of funded projects, this was from the first time that we started looking into approaches that enable learners to interact with the technology, obviously, but also with AI in ways that are not pre-structured and only designed to break down problems and applications, but to augment their autonomy and engagement and respect the dynamic nature of knowledge that Celia and Seymour Papert and Richard Noss from the beginning of the lab envisioned. And so our objective within that space is to make sure that students, while interacting in exploratory environments, they have some productive interaction, and that through being given feedback or task sequencing, they can have a more meaningful interaction than just be lost in an exploratory environment that has its own problems as well. So this particular example here is from the fractions lab example that was mostly designed to help students understand different concepts in fractions and embed it in a larger platform called iTalk2Learn that has various AI tools and methodologies behind it and technologies, including speech recognition, Bayesian networks for being able to detect when the student needs help, and speech production to produce the feedback to the students. But beyond the technology itself, the point in all of our projects and approaches, both here at the lab, but also from colleagues across the world, we make sure that we take a co-design approach with students, with teachers when appropriate, and having a critical view throughout the design, demanding evidence, not only on the lab or in very controlled conditions, but particularly in the classrooms. So we're not looking at what could have happened, but what is truly happening at this complex stage when these tools are being designed and evaluated. So despite the static image here, I hope you can see the excitement of the children working with these applications. And from all of our work, I'm flagging this fractions lab evaluation that we demonstrated that students who learn by this guided exploration and at the same time with more traditional intelligent tutoring systems, they end up with a richer understanding of the subject, still mastering both the step-by-step procedures, but also the conceptual aspects behind fractions. Kind of sort of changing hat, and although I cannot do justice, our colleague here, Mutlu Cukurova, would have been here, but unfortunately he cannot make it. But just briefly, and keeping with the themes of tools that are used for inquiry and exploratory learning, this project that we had together, the Pillars project, and with Rose Lakin a few years ago, it opened the work in the space of multimodal learning analytics, as it's been referred to these days, and mostly try to go beyond screen-based interaction and using analytics techniques to support and evaluate collaborative problem solving, while again, in line with the constructionist philosophy, students are engaged in open-ended design problems and appropriately instrumented the environment is able to collect data and they can ask for help in appropriate points. Now, with this kind of work in general, one of the goals is not only to support the students directly. In fact, in many cases, a system is not able to do that. And we may also not want to do that for various reasons that we'll touch on later. what is our other goal in this area is to provide assistance tools for educators. So our overarching questions is how could we design tools to assist the educators in this role that is changing when they're using this kind of open-ended exploratory tools. And of course, we and others in the field have done a lot of work in dashboards and what is generally referred to as learning analytics. But just to touch on a particular angle as well, we look at specific problems. Celia mentioned it in passing at the beginning. We look at the pain points of the orchestration in the classroom of these systems. And this example here, albeit a little bit old, is showing some work that we did to group students based on the similarity of the work that they are doing in the open-ended environment. So the system is designed to help the teacher identify meaningful groups based on what the students have done. And again, our colleague Mutlu would go a little bit deeper here and has expanded this work further in the last few years to be able to also do work in hybrid spaces and in physical spaces to interpret effective collaborative learning interactions and to encourage students to have reflections about learning to learn together and about collaborative problem solving. This kind of work is introducing another dimension beyond the tools specifically for learners and teachers and educators. This dimension is about using AI as a methodology, in that by having available data in these contexts, and models that underpin them, the interaction of the learners, we can design systems that the goal is not just to provide targeted feedback, but to give opportunities for reflection, both for the teachers and the learners, but also help us answer research questions. And in general, in our work, even as early as 2008, we had seen with Kaska here as well, she'll come in a minute, how we can leverage AI to refine the teaching methods and to understand also learning in general in this context and improve educational practice as a whole. So, and that use of AI as a methodology nicely introduces also another aspect, another dimension of this of work, which is the AI literacy, because especially as we are starting working with teachers and students and policymakers more, we are finding ourselves that we need to equip everyone, including ourselves, with skills on both the human and the technical dimension of AI. And so Alison mentioned at the beginning that we have the Education Technology Masters here at the Knowledge Lab. Again, over 8 or 9 years ago, we introduced specific module on artificial intelligence and data analytics in education that Kaska is leading and I'm co-teaching, where we have a variety of students, including teachers, in the cohort, but also our colleagues, again, Mutlu here is working with UNESCO on identifying competency frameworks for school students and teachers taking into account the emergence of AI and understanding both the technical side, but also the human dimensions, as in the impact on human rights, on social justice aspects, and so on. So the goal is to help the students become the teachers understand the space, but also the students to become literate in this space and make informed choices about how we use AI in education and in the classrooms in general. One also here's an opportunity to introduce another colleague at the lab, Wayne Holmes. He's also done some work with UNESCO on this space around generative AI, but in relation to this literacy aspect, the latest work you might be interested in is this special issue in the Journal of Artificial Intelligence in Education, that is the main venue that the International Society I mentioned at the beginning has, that touches a lot on these aspects as AI is coming of age. It's the special issue title. And so all of these dimensions naturally lead to an area that is emerging, especially as there is increased use of AI, both in society in general and in education specifically. And is a very critical area that has to do with taking into account and embracing or identifying and doing research on principles of responsible AI design and being critical on its application. So to unpack this further, I'm pleased to introduce Kaska Porayska-Pomsta, who will take from here. Kaska?
Thank you, Manolis. Thank you also, Alison and Celia, for the introductions to the lab. So I will expand a little bit more on the work that we are doing on the lab, which relates to responsible AI in education. Next slide, please. And to build on everyone's point to this points that were made so far, I wanted to kind of highlight the fact that what we are doing at the lab is not only providing critical perspectives on AI in education, we are also developing technologies. And this is a very important aspect of what we do, because that means that we can actually inform directly and also implement directly the AI technologies based on the evidence and the knowledge that we generate. And to this effect, we are looking at and also working with many different stakeholders in many different contexts, linking between their needs and the context within which they operate and which they inhabit, with the actual designs at both the human-computer interaction level, but also at the deep kind of algorithmic levels. So we take the entire social technical system into account, and all of the work that some of which actually has been already described by Celia and Manolis is providing the kind of the knowledge for and the evidence, and is informing our work on what does it mean to design responsible AI in education technologies, and what does it mean to deploy these technologies responsibly in the wild. This particular figure, which kind of encapsulates the idea of an AIEd ecosystem, and which emphasizes transdisciplinarity, multi-stakeholder involvement, and also cross-constituent or cross-sectorial kind of involvement of the different constituents within this ecosystem, comes from a chapter which was written by Holston and Durudi and published in a book on the ethics of AI, which I have co-edited with Wayne Holmes. Next slide, please. As part of what we are doing, I also wanted to add to the examples that Manolis has mentioned, and that Celia also mentioned, and to emphasize the fact that we're also designing for diversity. We are working with a multitude of different learners and educators, and from young children, neurodiverse learners, all the way to adults. So we are not focusing just on the so-called K-12 education. We are very much, and in line with a wider focus of the wider community, AIEd community globally, we are actually looking at human learning and development and the questions around the design and use of AI technologies for all. So these are just examples of just flags, if you like, of different projects which might be of interest to you. And as you can see, they are also funded by a diversity of funders, which also represents this and illustrates the interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity of the work that we do. One of those projects that I would like to kind of home in on is the TARDIS project, which also provides a very good illustration of the kind of aspects that we are focusing on when looking at responsible AI in education. This particular project was focusing on developing a technology, a serious game, if you like, to use an ancient term that is no longer used, I guess, in this field, for young adults at risk of social exclusion, to allow them to rehearse their communication skills, in particular in the context of job interviews. So this project didn't focus on assessing the quality of candidates, as might be thought. So it wasn't actually intended for use by employers. It was intended very much for use by young people, to allow them to rehearse and to acquire and to refine their communication skills so that they could engage in successful job interviews. And one of the things that this project involved was the development of a chatbot that performed the role of an interviewer. And another one, if you can please click the slide, because I think it's animated. Involved, the other thing involved actually a display of the data that was generated and interpreted by AI to the learners, and also to the practitioners who are supporting, human practitioners who are supporting those young people in their skills development and in the preparation, their preparation for job interviews. And together, what this system actually allowed us to deliver was an environment in which users were in control. And I use the term users. I know that Celia objects to this term. They were learners, and they were educational practitioners who could actually control this system, to adapt the system to the needs of their respective environments. It was a system which also allowed the opportunity for active rehearsal and experimentation and exploration. Manolis was talking about exploratory environments in the context of schools. This was much more informal context, where experimentation with the different forms of communication was very important, and it was very much part of the skills that we wanted to facilitate, the development of which we wanted to facilitate to the young people. AI in this context provided a prop and a prompt for these rehearsals and scaffolding, which whilst offering the opportunity for exploration, also ensured that learners didn't flounder. And also it provided, and it's really important actually across a lot of the projects that we have had, especially relating to diversity, it provided a safe space for this exploration and also self-actualization. The tools which they are referred as open learner models, by the way, within the AIEd field. So these are the tools which give the data back to the learners, to the users for inspection, which then also provides opportunities for discussion and for self-reflection and for development of metacognitive skills and self-regulation. They also form very much part of the work that is focusing on furnishing AI systems with transparency and ability to account for the interpretations that AI is performing of the users. They also provide an opportunity for exercising user autonomy. So, and this can be actually manifested either through the interaction with the system, but also outside of the use of the system, because this can be actually, these discussions can be taken away from the system and continued in other contexts, for example, in peer interactions, but also in further discussions with practitioners. It also offers a contextual flexibility. So, as I have just said, a lot of these discussions can actually continue beyond the use of the system, which is very important, because it also bridges between the AI and the contexts, the real world context in which the skills that we are trying to furnish learners with are being used and evaluated, and as such, it adds value to the contexts, to the real world contexts, by serving as tools for reflection and for engaging in self-understanding and self-regulation. Next slide, please. So, so this was just one example of the kind of work that we're doing, which emphasizes not only our ability to and our interest in the responsible AI issues and the ethics of AI more broadly, but also allowing us to actually implement what we learn and experiment with the implementations of these ideas in actual systems. So as part of this work, what we are also doing is developing, we began developing tools for helping practitioners, different practitioners and different stakeholders within the AI system, ecosystem, to make decisions about which relate to the responsible AI in education. And for example, for the designers, these decisions tools can support them, do support them in asking critical questions about design decisions at critical points within the AI development pipeline, from the initial idea of a system through data set construction, model definition, all the way to deployment and the feedback that that is received through the use of these technologies. And these tools are, so this is an example from, I appreciate that you won't be able to read this, but this is an example from our collaboration with the British Council, where we looked at critical questions relating to different forms of biases that may be introduced at the different points in the development, system development pipeline, and considered different implications and possible actions, concrete actions relating to the design decisions that may have to be taken as a consequence of interrogating the ethical value and the responsible AI dimensions during the development of a system. So this is essentially, this illustrates the richness of the work that we do. Again, I will emphasize that this work focuses on the critical dimensions related to AI, but also on the design. And next slide, please. Much of this can be actually read in some of the recent publications, one of which is a book which, as I already mentioned, I have co-edited with Wayne Holmes, our colleague who was already mentioned by Manolis, and other publications which expand on a lot of the ideas, including the decision tools for designers, and which also consider the dimensions of neurodiversity and the questions around thinking wider than the typical mainstream educational kind of contexts. So I invite you to have a look at these publications, and to summarize, if I can have the next slide. To summarize, I have already emphasized, and so did Manolis, AIEd is actually a field, and I think it's really important to realize this because there is a lot of hype. There is a lot of talk about AI in education, increasing talk, especially with the emergence of generative AI, which raises questions and also gives people a lot of ideas about what they may do in education. But at the same time, the field that has been going on for at least 45, 50 years has actually under its belt quite a lot of knowledge. It has specific tools as well that are actually illuminating in many respects. So, for example, the open learner models, which I have mentioned in the context of the TARDIS project, are some of the tools that are badly needed within wider AI field, and they really, and what is really important, they also come with evidence. So it's a field which is really important to refer to, especially when we're talking about the application of AI in education. But it's also a field which can inform in very concrete ways and technical ways as well wider AI developments. But in order to actually appreciate and also move forward this field, it is also very important to nurture collaborations amongst different stakeholders. This is very, very badly needed, and to recognize that in order for this field to move forward, and in order to actually inform fully the broader AI and the broader discourse around AI, including responsible AI, it is important to not reduce it to one single kind of field or a selection of fields which may seem convenient at the time, at any particular time, but to consider it as a transdisciplinary endeavor. So on that note, I will pass on the baton to Manolis.
Yes, thank you, Kaska. We wanted to remind you first, if you have more questions, maybe we can take a few. This is the Slido again. There are already some questions. Kaska, you may want to look at the chat. And to remind you of the next steps in this series of Alan Turing AIUK Fringe events. Tomorrow, Kaska at 5 o'clock UK time is giving with Learnas, think tank organization here in UK, a talk on from algorithm workshop to the art of human learning, with insights from 50-year journey of AI in education. So it will continue this discussion that we started today. On Friday, we are having here at the UCL Knowledge Lab an in-person fireside chat. We don't have a fireplace, but we have this polytope that gives us the opportunity to have multidimensional discussions around various aspects. And so we will have a discussion around AI, learning and knowledge, building on what was discussed today, and also from the input from your questions in Slido, with several colleagues who will be here in person, and also Martin Oliver, who will join us in the panel with Kaska. I'll leave you with this slide. I'll just flash it with some colleagues in the lab. We're not doing justice to who is in the team. There are many people, including several students, who are also behind all the organization here and are helping, and we cannot thank them enough. I will put this slide back so as you have the slide if you're interested, and since we have 5 minutes, we can take a couple of questions. I'll start, if that's okay. So one of the questions is around the fact that now everyone is, so the question is, now everyone is talking about AI, but you, I guess, as a group, we have been talking about AI for 20 years. And as we mentioned as well, the field has been talking about this for even more. How did you imagine AI in education 20 years ago? Has this happened somehow? This is the question. I'll start and invite others as well. I think for me, it's very, very interesting question to reflect, and this is what we try to do. I think we're at the cusp of what was imagined being possible somehow. And for years, it was somehow a toy field for some people trying to identify technical and also theoretical challenges. There were many rich ideas that were explored in small prototype projects and ways. I mentioned from the beginning that I have this stance where I'm skeptically optimistic. And so I think we are now at a kind of juncture where many of these earlier visions that all of us had in different constellations are becoming feasible thanks to the advancement of technology and research. But there are all these aspects that we need to now pay attention to. The critical questions that we mentioned that the lab is bringing as well, and the responsible and ethical AI use. And so this evolution to the point of possibility, there is a lot of discussion in the field in academia. There is another question as well around whether it's even relevant anymore to do research in AI in an academic space. There are some discussions around this about the challenges and so on. But for me, it makes it like an exciting time somehow, where it is becoming possible to see how we can improve learning, but also take into account the issues that we mentioned before. Kaska, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, or another question that I think you would like to take was around how we work. We touched on a couple of times around transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary work that we are doing. And the question is if we can explain a little further about the challenge of interdisciplinary working. Do you apply a systems thinking lens? Is a question. You're muted.
Well, anyone who has worked in interdisciplinary context knows that this doesn't come without challenges. And this is definitely the case in AI in education. One thing that I would say is that the field of AIEd has been from the very beginning open and actually reliant on other disciplines to inform both its motivation, but also its operation. And so it naturally kind of evolved as an interdisciplinary field. So very often you will find people within this field who have multiple different backgrounds, including engineering, computer science, psychology, linguistics, you name it. It's something which is almost a prerequisite for engaging in this field. Now, this is about the research field itself. But when we kind of expand into beyond the field itself, it becomes a little bit more tricky because we are dealing with an ecosystem which is diverse, which is quite politicized as well, because it's education. Education is political, and so is AI actually, increasingly. The challenges are definitely the key challenges are in navigating the different, multiple, and often conflicting incentives and interests in developing these, and motivations as well in developing these systems. So far, and I think this will be, Manolis and Celia and Alison, please do come in on this as well, because this is a challenge that we grapple with. I think every time we engage in a project, and even in discussions like this, I presume there are many people online and listening to this who come from different backgrounds. And for different reasons are interested in this. We do work very much from the ground up, and there's a lot of work that is involved in actually developing the language to start with, that we can use to communicate, and through which we can develop a trust that we are actually talking about the same things, or at least similar things, or similar enough things to make progress on the things that we are talking about, and that we are aiming for. We do try to be quite conscious about different incentives and different motivations and different context. And so Manolis mentioned earlier co-design. So it's collaboration, co-design, participatory design, knowledge engineering, knowledge elicitation. We rely on a multitude of different methods to generate as wide a set of perspectives, and to then be able to understand and reconcile the perspectives in order to make progress. Of course, there are situations in which the perspectives do not reconcile, and this raises, I think, fundamental questions for the way that not only we collaborate, but also for the way that we think about, for the way that we design technology. So we may have to think about designing technologies. I think this really taps into the questions around the flexibility of technologies to be adapted to the individual contexts. And this is something where the focus on the diversity, neurodiversity, of the systems that we design, for example, at the lab, it becomes really useful because it highlights very much. It takes us kind of outside of the mainstream type of thinking, and that includes also the standard model of AI, where there is a kind of a the emphasis on achieving particular prescribed goals and within prescribed kind of contexts, into thinking where we can actually challenge the standard model, and where human control becomes of paramount importance in the interaction with AI. So the question about interdisciplinarity is a really important one. It's very much, I would say that again, just to summarize, the key challenge is in developing a common language, but also in recognizing the differences. And by recognizing these differences, one of the way forwards that we are definitely exploring and have explored through very concrete projects and designs and also discussions, that kind of extends our thinking beyond what we already know into what we actually need on the ground, in order to allow for the different perspectives to find their voice into the designs, but also in the use of the technologies.
Thank you, Kaska. Thanks. I think we have just a couple of minutes more. I'll read one more question.
Manolis, I think Alison wanted to say,
Sure, yeah.
come in on this point.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Kaska was saying. I think that it's really important. So Kaska's laid this out very well, that solving big problems requires people to come together in this interdisciplinary way. And the different disciplines have different epistemic perspectives. Of course, we at the Knowledge Lab, we're very interested in these epistemic perspectives, because it's all about knowledge and how we understand it and what kind of data that we have. So things like building trust and communication is really important. But one thing that we have to recognize is that when we bring people together in new ways, we can create opportunities, but there are also epistemic injustices where there are winners and losers, and sometimes certain ways of thinking about the world or about data can give some people advantage. And I think all of us have to have what we term epistemic humility. It's an openness. We have to develop this openness to understanding how lots of different people think. And I think that AI and education in particular is an area where that really has to happen, so that we don't have what you mentioned at the very beginning, Manolis, which is people seeing AI as hero or villain. We need to come to this middle ground where we can develop AI in ways that benefit learners.
Yeah, thank you. Or seeing it only as a dissemination of knowledge, which was the first slide that we started today. That was what Seymour Papert was saying in the opening of the lab. And I think maybe there are a few more questions, but this is a good moment to to close that. And we will take the questions as input for our chat discussion. If anyone else, if you can't make it and you ask something and you want to contact us separately in this email address, you can do that. Otherwise, we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow and on Friday, and to keep looking at this field and at our core values in making progress in this area. Thank you. I'll stop this here and see you soon.